Hello, friends. Hello, friends. A tradition unlike any other.
Oh, my goodness. In your life, have you seen anything like that?
There it is! Adam Scott, a life changer.
Mashed potato!
Here it comes.
This is the 19th tee. Kieran Marsh and Nathan Drudy back with you for another week. Drudster, we've had a winner of a women's major. We've had Keegan Bradley return to the winner's circle on the PGA Tour. Plenty happening as we fast forward our focus to the British Open in less than 5 weeks now. I've played a little bit of golf, which is newsworthy in and of itself, given my track record in the past 18 months. A bit to cover tonight. Always good to have your company.
No, excited to be here, KM. Good back for another week. We're at last show of the financial year, KM, as well. So
there you go. I trust you to focus in on the facts and figures. EOFY. This is the EOFY version of the 19th Tee podcast. A week where we salute Ruining Yin, who becomes just the second woman from China to win a women's major, a one-stroke victory over Yuka Saso at the KPMG Women's PGA Championship from Baltusrol. A clinic, really, Drudes, when you look at it. I think the thing that stands out to me, just at a headline level, 100% greens in regulation across the third and fourth round for Ruining Yin. Tells the story for mine.
Yeah, absolutely. It was 37 in a row because she got 18. She hit 18 on Friday as well. So, which is, I mean, that's truly phenomenal. 100% over the weekend when theoretically conditions are at its hardest, and it's exactly right. 66 of 72 in total. Truly phenomenal. And I think then if you look at her putting stats as well, she averaged 33 putts around, which isn't that great, to be honest. So it was she was doing a hell of a job with the irons in hand. So yeah, actually a phenomenal statistic that I don't think I've quite comprehended just yet, KM.
No, and I think the important point you made there was the fact that the putting wasn't necessarily supporting the absurdly clean approach play. Poignant in the fact that, you know, Yuka Saso herself, a major champion, having won the 2021 US Women's Open from the Olympic Club in California, she was putting the pressure on, and she's been largely unsighted, really, in her professional golfing career since that major victory. But she came with a flurry in this final round, got up and down from the bunker to birdie and put a bit of pressure on in the last, and then Ruining Yin, sends her tee shot wayward on the 72nd hole into the rough, and you're thinking, goodness me, we're probably looking at a par at best here and potentially a playoff. But, clinical again with the iron in hand and gives herself a look at a birdie, not many of which had dropped, best part of probably 12 to 15 feet, and she manages to do it, which is what you want to do. I mean, that's, I think, when anyone imagines themselves, whether they actually can and it's within their capabilities, or whether you're just playing your local course on a weekend. Imagine yourself winning a major. It's that birdie putt on the 18th with a little bit of distance. And she did it, and she did it comfortably, as I said, to become just the second Chinese woman to win a major. So an incredible story, really. And I probably wanted to get your thoughts first and foremost here. We will get to Rose Zhang because she also made a late run, and that's a name that we've spoken about particularly recently a lot on this podcast. But the comparisons are quite... Well, they're quite in your face in the sense that Ruining Yin has won her first start at a major. She also won on her debut on the LPGA Tour a little earlier this year. Rose Zhang was shooting to do the same, and I compared the relative focus on both players. We knew very little of Ruining Yin coming into this. What we knew of Rose Zhang was almost entirely to do with her unprecedented college career. But it's again that complex that we talk about of the American golfing society, almost so thirsty for a female champion that, Rose Zhang has all the attention, particularly in this final round, and an understated Ruining Yin comes through and is the one holding the trophy at the end.
Well, it's quite incredible, really, when you think about Rose Zhang being the great hope of US women's golf, and she's played 3 fucking tournaments, and this is her first major, right? Like, I think that's pretty unfair for Rose Zhang, to be honest. But yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I think for this tournament, I was just looking at the leaderboard there, 9 players within 3 strokes of the lead. So really competitive. And we probably don't see that as often on the men's side. I was just thinking back to the LA Country Club last week. I think we only had maybe 3 or 4 players within 3 shots. So there were a heap of players in contention, and there were a number of ways in which this could go. But yeah, it just largely, again, I guess, we hear so much about the players from South Korea. We hear so much about the players from the US, even the Philippines at times. We know that up in sort of Scandinavian Europe have got some incredible players. Our Aussie girls are there. That we do tend to forget about the Chinese golfers on the women's side, particularly. I mean, of course, you got Hao Tong Lee, and everyone knows my thoughts on Hao Tong Lee on the men's side. But you've got two Chinese players finished in the top 3 at this major. So yeah, maybe we need to be starting to pay a little bit more attention to the Chinese golfers on the US, on the LPGA, Marshy. Not sure.
Well, I mean, you look down in the tie for third is Angel Lin, and the funny story goes is that Roy Ning Yin is actually living in Angel Lin's house as a Chinese golfer making her start, and obviously a familiar face therefore on the LPGA tour, and the joke going around was she could probably afford to buy Angel Yin's house off the back of this win, a $1.5 million payday for Roy Ning Yin, part of the $10 million purse of the KPMG Women's PGA Championship. But you're right. I think really anything that China turns their hand to, just by sheer weight of volume, you're bound to have a number, and also probably discipline and dedication. That's the nature of their culture across the board, let alone in sport. But yeah, I mean, I think you see, particularly in the women's side of the game, a steady production line of players coming out of China. To your point, not necessarily I suppose replicated or supported on the men's side of the game, but 2 inside the top 5 at this tournament. I think more broadly as well, Drew, is what impresses me. Like, you look down the top 10 here at the KPMG Women's PGA, and you're looking at, to do some rough maths on the run, China, Japan, Spain, Sweden, America, England, Korea, all in the top 10. So a spread of nations as well. Which is not necessarily common on the men's side of the game either. So, we've said this kind of, I think, from the outset of this podcast, running on 4 or 5 years now, the women's game is in an incredibly strong position, not least of which because of its diaspora of talent when it comes to, nations and origins of players. I mean, Yuka Saso was on the verge of becoming the first player to ever win 2 majors under separate nationalities. Yeah, she won under the Philippines flag at the 2021 US Open. She competed under the Japanese flag this week, and that's her father's side of the family. The story goes because the visa makes it easy for her to travel the world playing golf. So, yeah, it's an incredibly eclectic and diverse group of women's golfers at the very forefront of this game, and I think it only adds to what is an entertaining product in and of itself.
Point for me to pull out, and only I would pull this out. Good to see some yellow in the flags at the top of the leaderboard as well. Getting pretty sick of red, white, and blue combinations. It's the first thing I look for now is the combination of colours in the flags. Need some green or something to get in there. So I don't know where that's going to come from. 6 bogeys, Marshy, for the week for Ryong Ning. How did I say that? Ryong Ning Yin. 6 bogeys.
Yeah.
6 bogeys for the entire week, which is phenomenal, really. 14 birdies, obviously, but yeah, just truly impressive stuff, and just so in control of her ball. And it feels a little criminal that when you hit 36 of 36 greens over the weekend and hit the ball as well as she did, to only win by 1 stroke. But nonetheless, she is holding the trophy at the end of 72 holes. So congratulations to her.
We'll make a quick scoot down the leaderboard as we generally do. So I mentioned Yuka Saso finishes at 7 under, just 1 stroke back in outright second. 5 players there in a tie for third. A further stroke back at 6 under. Carlota Saganda, the Spanish woman. Anna Norquist from Sweden. Megan Kang of America. Angel Lin, as I said, in a tie for third. Stephanie Meadow the Englishwoman. Now, I call out Stephanie Meadows' name here, Druids. Did you see the topped fairway wood on
Yes.
18 today?
Yes.
Goodness me. Have you ever seen anything more relatable in professional golf than that shot from Stephanie Meadows? To her credit, she got up and down for par, I believe, to round out her place there in the top 5. But the mental fortitude, because I generally go to complete water, to be honest, after a shot like that. I was impressed with her composure to step up and get up and down following that topped fairway wood.
Well, it was a bit a la Rory McIlroy at like the 2018 Tour Championship. Do you remember that at East Lake on the 18th? I think he topped a three wooden. He didn't end up in the water, but yeah, there was shades of Rory doing that very quickly came rushing back. But no, I tend to agree. I mean, look, I've done enough of those now in my time playing golf that it's now just water off a duck's back for me, KM. It's you do that, you step up and you go again. And I like to think that's built resilience within me.
Moving down the leaderboard, Druids, I think the next person I want to call out here is Rose Zhang, who, yeah, as I said, the ceiling here for this player is, it's difficult to really quantify when you consider the resume she's already built at a college level, winning on her debut. A lot of people fancied her amazingly coming in at a major debut this week. And I temper all this by saying, our winner, Rooney, as I said, has won in her major debut. But Rose Zhang put herself in the conversation today with a closing 67. I think she'll rue the 74 on the second round, but she only finishes 3 strokes back. And really, I don't think dissuades anyone from their opinion of her based on her performance this week.
No, I mean, little stumble on the back today, 13 and 16 with bogeying both of those. But I guess that's probably more, as you say, so young in her career that you can certainly forgive that run, as they say in the racing world. But yeah, she had a run, Marshy, from rounds 3 through 4, where she didn't make a bogey between hole 6 in her third round and hole 1 in her third round and hole 13 in her fourth round. And in that time, she made a further 2, 4, 6, 7 birdies and an eagle. So she went on a truly incredible run over the weekend to put herself in contention. As I say, stumbled today, but on that back 9, 13 and 16, as I mentioned. But, as you said, absolutely no knock from my perspective. She's going to be a very, very special player. And I hope it doesn't all happen too quickly for her. I mean, we've seen with so many sports people across the world that we've seen where they burst onto the scene, they are the next great hope, and then things don't go to plan, and all of a sudden it's why we're asking questions why. So hopefully that's not the case for her, because she's going to be a very, very special talent.
I tend to agree. And we said this at the time when we're running through her resume a couple of weeks ago, that the challenge will be maintaining a balance away from the course, because clearly golf is not the issue. She has that in spades, maybe more so than anyone we've seen on the women's side of the game for a long, long time. So you hope for her sake that she is given every opportunity to fulfill that abundant potential that we know she has. So a quality finish, T8 in her maiden her maiden major performance. T11 is where I want to fall here, Druids. There's 3 players there. I only really want to talk about Leona Maguire because she was the 54-hole leader. Looked in a commanding position, to be honest. She had her challenges, there was no doubt about that, but the manner in which she played, particularly for the first 2 days, she absolutely deserved the lead and deserved, I suppose, people's not presumption, but confident prediction that she'd go on and close it out. She ended up having a 74 today. And just to articulate how, I suppose, surprising that performance was from the 54-hole leader, This is courtesy of the LPGA Tour's channels after the third round. So Leona Maguire's last 8 rounds leading into Sunday at Baltusrol, inclusive of the 3 rounds in the tournament at that point, were all in the 60s. So that equaled the longest consecutive streak of rounds in the 60s so far this season on the LPGA Tour. She had an average strokes gained total of plus 4.63 on the field in her last 8 rounds. She was 5.5 birdies or better per round, scoring average of 67.5, and was hitting through those 8 rounds 82.6% of greens in regulation. So those numbers were insane based on where she was at. And based on her scoring average of the previous 8 rounds, she's in fact shot 6.5 shots over what she was averaging leading into that final round. So of anyone in the field, I mean, there'll be players above her, no doubt, who are disappointed not to get the job done, probably not least of which Yuka Saso finishing 1 shot off the eventual winner and ruining in. But I don't know that there'd be anyone more disappointed leaving Baltusrol than the Irishwoman Leona Maguire.
Yeah, for the 4 bogeys between holes 6 and 14 today. So that 9-hole stretch, she was 3 over, made a birdie on 13 and had 35 putts today. So that's probably the story in a nutshell for Leona, that the putter wasn't firing. And yeah, she should be very disappointed because she's one of the world's best on her day, Leona. And she'll be bitterly disappointed with her finish there after playing so well for 3 rounds.
She was coming in as the most recent winner on the LPGA as well. She won the Major Classic the week prior. So the hot hand in the field leading in, she's obviously an extremely talented player and one that we do like because we have a soft spot for Irish players on either tour on this podcast. But yeah, you would have expected more from a player of her caliber in that final round when it counted. So no doubt she'll be a bit of self-reflection going on for Leona Maguire in the coming days based on that performance. That leads nicely into our next player on the leaderboard, and that's a player we want to spend a bit of time on. Grace Kim, outright 14th, the Aussie, her highest finish in a major to date. Obviously, she played her first major a few weeks back in the Chevron Classic on the LPGA Tour, and she's really playing her first full season on the LPGA this year. Outright 14th in your second start. She's making every poster winner is Grace, and we've seen this. I think we've probably known from the moment we spoke to her on the podcast that she was destined for bigger things than playing here in Australia or in Europe or across Asia. We knew that the LPGA was the final destination, and what we're seeing now is certainly not the complete fulfillment of her potential, but I think a projection that shouldn't surprise anybody who's been keeping an eye on the last 2 or 3 years, Dreads.
Yeah, for sure. I think we said even in sort of the 5 minutes that we spent on this tournament at the back end of last week's episode, we said that this would be a course that maybe suited someone like Grace Kim, who is quite an attacking player, really well. Baltusrol, 8 bogeys for the rounds, for the four rounds. My apologies. So again, just really clean. Unfortunately, not making a whole heap of birdies to really push towards the top of the leaderboard. And the iron play, which has probably been one of her strengths, was sort of lacking a little bit in the first 2 rounds, only hitting 13 of 18 and 12 of 18 greens. But the putter certainly made up for it particularly across the weekend. But she's going to be a very good player. Grace Kim, nothing seems to phase her. I think that's the point that I continually come back to. I don't know that there's a lot of pressure on Grace, if that's fair. I think it's maybe we look at her and think that she is going to be, or she should be, our next great hope. But yeah, I don't know if that's sort of reflected internally, that nothing seems to phase Grace. She goes about her business. She's immensely talented, and I like the way that she finished today. Had an early bogey that could have really derailed their round, but balanced things up and managed to finish the round 2 under par, and outright 14th is no nothing to sneeze at in just her second major, I believe.
Yeah, phenomenal performance. Takes home just short of 150,000 US as well, which will, if nothing else, provide a little bit of financial security as she plans out the remainder of the year, which, as we know, and we've heard countless times through countless stories on this podcast, it's incredibly important to have that safety net of cash sitting underneath you and kind of liberate and free you up to play the tournaments that you want to play as opposed to have to play, to shore up your future, which is excellent for Grace and something she thoroughly deserved after the work she's been putting in. I don't have too many more I want to single out other than just probably running through the Aussies. Druids down at a tie for 20th. Minjee Lee, who I think on balance would be pretty disappointed, to be honest. I think she was 2 or 3 strokes off the lead after 36 holes. She went 72-67 through Thursday, Friday, and probably had a lot of people looking over their shoulder. Well, not many because she was near the top, but certainly a lot of people around that top 10 thinking, goodness, not sure how sustainable Leanna Maguire's run is, given she's not done it at a major before. And I'm looking at people around me and, Minjee is a former US Women's Open winner and what do we got ahead of us? So, yeah, I think it wheels fell off really in the third round, to be honest, for Minjee. 75 is not great at all. She brought it back with a 69 today to finish at 1 under and ultimately 7 strokes back and a tie for 20th. But that's a disappointing finish for Minjee, who, a major champion, person who expects the very best out of herself. And so do we as fans. That's not unfair or to cast aspersions on the performance. Suffice to say, where she was sitting after 36 holes, we would have expected her to finish higher than in a tie for 20th, Druids.
Yep. Totally agree. I mean, look, she wasn't the only one to falter on the Saturday. There's plenty of rounds in the 70s. Round 1, 34 putts to sort of, I think it was 1 over par on the first round, if I'm not mistaken. 34 putts in the first round, only hitting 10 of 14 fairways, 9 of 14 fairways in round 3, and 33 putts again. So it was just a little bit up and down for Minjee. 29 putts in round 2. So yeah, it was just a little bit of a roller coaster. So yeah, no doubt she'll be disappointed to be finishing so far back in the field when really we, as you mentioned, we expect her to be a lot closer to the top.
Conversely, which is going to sound strange because she actually finished below her, but I think Gabby Ruffles will be walking out of this week quite happy with her performance, finishing an even par and a tie for 24th. Not her first major, but still, we're incredibly early in her career, right at the beginning, to be honest. So to be having those performances, we know she has a spot in the US Women's Open. She goes to a course she's pretty familiar with at Pebble Beach. I think she's rounding into form at exactly the right time as she wants to go and shake up a major. And the performance here at Baltusrol, I think, projects well for her next outing at Pebble Beach.
Yeah, well, started very poorly, didn't she? She was 4 over par through the first 6 holes in the first round and managed to rally and bring it back to 2 over at the end of 18 holes and made the cut and rallied really hard in that second round to get herself heavily above the cut line and then gave 3 shots back on 15, 16, 17. And I think she might have only just snuck through on the cut line, actually. But yeah, she, again, so young in her career, as I feel like we say about a lot of these Aussie female players, just very, very early in their career. And the experience is going to be invaluable for these ladies in their career moving forward.
Druids, moving down, not an Aussie, but worth making mention of Lydia Ko, P57, pretty disappointing to finish at 6 over, given the run we know she's been on, particularly in the last 12 months, and also for what is the 3rd ranked player in the world, which leads me into just a little segue I want to go on here. Now, I don't invest as long-time listeners of this podcast would know, I don't invest all that much time in world rankings, particularly on the men's side. But quite unique if you work your way down the women's world rankings as it relates to this leaderboard. So Jin Young Ko is the number 1 ranked women's player in the world, the South Korean, the dominant South Korean. She finished in a tie for 20th. So not crazy disappointing, but she is the best player in the world per rankings. If you then go through the next couple, it's not great reading. Nelly caught her, albeit a long layoff with injury, and she knows she's come back from the wrist, which is always spells trouble as a golfer. She's the second best women's player in the world per rankings. She missed the cut. Lydia Ko is the third, tie for 57th. Lilia Vu, the American fourth, missed the cut. Minjee Lee, fifth, who we've just spoken about, in the tie for 20th as well. Ataya Titikul missed the cut at sixth. Like, there is a lot of players here at the very pointy end of the women's game. Highest finishing being the number one ranked player in the world at a tie for 20th. So I'm not sure what that says, if it says more about Baltusrol or if it says more about just the form of these players at the pointy end at the moment. But yeah, Baltusrol took some names this week, particularly those at the very top of the game.
Yes, interesting stat that you read through there. I didn't know that. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe that's a reflection of the course. I'd suggest that perhaps some players weren't able to step up and deliver when they needed to, perhaps.
Tend to agree. Just rounding out the other Australians, T61, Steph Kyriakou really wanted to call this out. 7 over, and 15 shots back of the lead doesn't necessarily jump out at you as worthy of a mention, but it was revealed, I believe, after her second round, that prior to her second round, or maybe it was her first, it was sometime in the first 36 holes, she'd been on a drip, an IV drip the night prior to either her first or second round. Looking at the scores, it may well have been the first to 75. About a food poisoning, I believe. But to sit on an IV drip and get herself up to play and then still make the cut in a major is an exceptional effort. So I just wanted to call out Steph Kyriakou there. Hannah Green finishing a tie for 68th. A winner most recently on the LPGA Tour as well this season. 8 overs, disappointing for Hannah. And it doesn't get much better from an Australian perspective. So Sarah Kemp missed the cut on the number at 6 over. And then if you continue to scroll down, it's not great. Karis Davison, 10 over, missing the cut. Sue O, 17 over. Really, 82 in the first round. Baltusrol wasn't easy. Put it that way. I think particularly depending on the wave that you took. But, a couple of Aussies there disappointingly not making the weekend. So that is the KPMG Women's PGA Droids.
Yes. Wrapped up.
Shall we head to the PGA Tour?
Yeah,
well, I think briefly to the PGA Tour. There's not a great deal here for me because TPC River Highlands doesn't light a fire underneath me, nor does the Travellers Championship. So Keegan Bradley, your eventual winner, by 3 strokes at 23 under, which I think tells the story. Some interesting quotes from Rory where he said he kind of feels as though technology has left courses like TPC River Highlands go by. Essentially was his words, which, yes, welcome to the chat, Rory. Agree. I think it would be nice if you maybe shared your sentiments with a few of your colleagues who don't see that there's any problem with the distance or the speed at which the ball travels. He did his best. He got a bit wobbly, Keegan, on the back 9 today, but he manages to hold on. I think that's 4 or 5 wins now for him in his PGA Tour career. Of course, a major champion, which we often overlook. Not everyone's cup of tea. He's not offensive, but he's just a bit vanilla, is Keegan Bradley. But he got the job done. He and Shez Reavie were kind of duking it out for most of the final round. Shez Reavie drops ultimately 4 strokes back at 1900 and a tie for 4th. Along with Paddy Cantlay, who I saw today, has jumped up in a 4th in the world, ahead of Victor Hovland in the world rankings, which, to my point roughly 7 minutes ago, I put absolutely no credit behind the men's OWGR rankings. That you think Patrick Cantlay is the 4th best men's golf in the world, that anybody thinks that is completely fucking wild to me.
Yeah. He sucks.
Yeah, he's just the worst. Scotty Scheffler, an effortless 1900, another top 5 finish. It's becoming laughable now almost how good this season is from a ball striking perspective, Drew, without necessarily racking up the wins. You get the sense that we'll look back on it in years to come as truly a historic season tee to green.
Yeah.
Just not on the green itself.
It's actually wild how good at golf he is.
Mm.
But it's not even, I think if we go back to this time, no, not even this time last year. When was it? His first win was Phoenix, maybe?
Phoenix, yeah.
Yeah, last year. And I think at the time we were kind of like, okay, this is cool. And then he came out and he won again and won again and won the Masters. And it was like, all right, when's this going to finish? And it just hasn't. It's one of the all-time great heaters of, I know he's not winning, but 16 in a row. Sorry, what did you say that stat was before? Did you say 16? Or am I dreaming?
16 what? Sorry. I'm just scrolling through a few Scotty-related stats, so I can tell you in a moment.
Yeah, no, I thought there was like a stat that I saw. There was like 16 top 20s in a row or something ridiculous like that.
Yeah.
So he's playing exceptional golf, and yeah, he's on one of the all-time great heaters, Scotty Scheffler, and he continues to grow in my book as someone that I genuinely enjoy watching play golf.
So let me take you through his tee to green rankings in his last 10 tournaments, just to kind of articulate what we're talking about here. He was second tee to green at Bay Hill, first at the Players, second at the Masters, fifth at the Heritage, second at the Nelson, first at the PGA Championship, first at Colonial, first at Memorial, third at the US Open, and second tee to green this week at the Travelers. He has in 15 starts now. 15 starts so far this year on the PGA Tour, lost to a total of 66 players. Period.
That's
in 15 starts. He may well be staring down the barrel of losing to less than 100 players across the entirety of 2023. And as we like to do, comparing that to anything to do with Tiger Woods, in the year 2000, the very peak of Tiger, he played 22 events and lost to only 68 golfers in that calendar golfing year. So,
wow.
Like Scotty is phenomenal. No one's as good as Tiger, nor likely will they ever be. But Scotty is having a remarkable year without necessarily, like, all things being equal, if he putted just at average, just at zero, not losing nor gaining any strokes to the field, he's probably looking at having already won 5 or 6 tournaments. Well, I mean, I just rattled off 3 tournaments he was first tee to green in. He wins those if he putts at average. So we're looking at probably a 5 or 6 win season so far if he's putting's at average, which is insane, to be honest. And why I will have no fear in not picking him at Royal Liverpool in 5 weeks' time unless something drastically changes, to be honest. But let's put that one in the back pocket. Just working our way down the leaderboard further, Rory McIlroy in a tie for 7th at 18 under, good without being great, which is crazy to say about an 18 under par score across 72 holes. But thereabouts.
Made an ace.
He did. So I'm just trying to, it was, I believe, the opening round. This just will teach me always to have these things ready to go in front of me, because I flagged this to you, something I wanted to mention prior to us hitting the record button, and I just never drew the stat up in front of me. So it was his first ace, I believe, in his entire PGA Tour career.
True.
There was, however, a stat tweeted from at PGA Tour Comms, which is a great account if you don't follow it and you are a Twitter user. So it's kind of like, I suppose, the official account of the communications and media team of the PGA Tour. They tweet things like pairings, pin placements for the following day, and then just quirky little stats. One of which was posted following Rory's ace, which I'm desperately trying to scroll down and find. His first ace in his entire career. Here we go. Here it is, Dreads. Hole in one at number 8 on the opening day of the tournament. His first career ace on the PGA Tour. Have a guess across the entirety of his PGA Tour how many par 3s he's played. Bearing in mind, it's the first time he's ever scored a hole in one in his PGA Tour career. How many par 3s has he played across his PGA Tour career?
Many thousands. Circa 4,300.
Yeah, you've given it a little bit of extra mayo.
Okay.
A little bit of GST there on your figure, which is fine. That was the 8th at the Travellers, TPC River Highlands on Thursday was his 3,253rd par 3 he'd played in his career to secure his first ace. There's a quirky little stat for you from Rory McIlroy. He tied with a guy who I don't know a great deal about. I've heard the name before, and I apologise for my lack of knowledge. People may know a bit more than me who are listening, but Denny McCarthy, just your average run-of-the-mill tour player, almost holed out on 18 on Thursday for a 59. And I mean almost hold out, like the barest of margins.
Close, wasn't it? Yeah.
Just incredible. It would have been a 59, would have been absolutely incredible. So he's obviously regressed across the weekend to finish in a tie for 7th, which brings us neatly to Minwoo Lee. Drew, another top 10. Takes home a couple of $100,000 US, but more importantly, essentially secures his place in the PGA Tour next year. So off the back of the PGA Championship, both he and Ryan Fox, you'll recall from our review podcast after that tournament, secured essentially a special exemption through to the remainder of the season, which allowed them unlimited sponsor exemptions. So pick and choose the tournaments you want to play, you'll be in. Give you every opportunity to sew up your status for next year. I think he's had 3 top 10s since then. Most recently this week at the US Open at LACC the week prior, and another one. The name of the tournament escapes me, but he has now essentially done it. Like, he's got the better part of 300 non-member points, which, you know, should sit him comfortably inside the top 125. Now it will be a matter of what's his level of status. Is it full status? Is it conditional status? He heads to Scotland now, where he plays the British Masters, and he'll stay over there through to the Open Championship, because that's his other route through. I think he's in the top 3, maybe in the DP World Tour rankings at the moment.
Yeah.
So
the top 2 are Rory and John Rahm. So he's essentially he's number 1.
So not otherwise exempt.
Yes. So apparently that is largely unassailable. I was reading before, so he's pretty much he's locked in for the PGA Tour next year. And of course, there's not many events left on the actual PGA Tour that aren't co-sanctioned with the DP World Tour. Obviously, we've got the Scottish Open and then the Open Championship. They're the only 2 left that I think that he's actually going to get a start in that are co-sanctioned with the PGA Tour. So he's got to play well in both of those just to 100% lock everything up. But it's all but done. And yes. Interestingly, at the minute, Marshy, like we always refer to Minwoo as the ball striking as being something that is just renowned for him. 63rd in strokes gained approach this week, really poor, and 33rd in strokes gained tee to green, but second around the green and second with the putter in hand. So, as I say, the abacus never aligns, and you can never get all the beads on one side. So, hopefully can kind of turn that around and put it all together, and it'd be great to see him notch up a victory at some point as well. So,
yeah, I think what's so impressive about him is it's one thing getting the opportunity, it's another thing taking it. And it hasn't been, top 30s. He's literally had 3 top 10s now in the last couple of weeks, which is exceptional. And there's enough events now with enough variety of strength of fields. He's going to bob up and win one soon. I've got no doubt about that. Lovely to see him as well. He did a great, he was one of the walking interviews with the AirPods on the coverage, and a lot of credit. He was actually meant to be at Baltusrol supporting Min G this week. He wasn't in the field at the Travellers, and then I think he's finished in the top 10 at the US Open, sewed up a spot, so he decided to play on. But there, a lot of praise for his sister in that interview that he did with the broadcast, which was excellent. So quality young man and a quality golfer with everything ahead of him, which is great. Speaking of quality young men and quality young golfers, Lucas Herbert as well, Drew, it's worth mentioning T15 was his final position, I believe, which is another great start for him. He's not necessarily in the same ballpark in terms of current points and status as Minwoo, but he's chasing. And you might find, continued performances like that. Probably not this year, but he's going to get more starts, and maybe he follows the same sort of path in terms of a special temporary exemption next year. It was the same path that Cameron Smith followed onto the tour back in 2014. So there's form lines there for Australians who do it, who make the most of their opportunities when they get the chance to go to the States. And Herbie's another one who's playing some pretty bloody good golf, obviously winning in Japan a couple of months ago, and now he's hitting a good ball over in the States.
He is, yeah, particularly with the flat stick, third this week in strokes game putting. So, he is in good form. Loves Instagram too. If you're not following on the gram, he'll give you some great insight into the game as well. So, I definitely get around him. And also, friend of the pod as well that we've had on many years ago now, Jamie Glazier. If you follow him on Instagram as well, he works with Lucas Herbert in sort of mental resilience, mental coaching space. He's a great follow. Often spends quite a bit of time with Lucas. So if you want a bit of behind the scenes access, follow those two.
Good shout out, Jamie Glazier, the mental mastery. It's good stuff, Jamie Glazier. Other Aussies in the field, Adam Scott finishing a tie for 19th at 14 under. Cam Davis, T33, bouncing back from what's been a couple of disappointing weeks, particularly at the US Open. Of course, talking out of my hip pocket there as my roughie selection, but that's fine. T33 for Cam Davis, J Day, T45. I continue to call it J Day because I know it gets under the skin of one or two of our listeners.
So I get that.
A good finish for J Day at T45 at 9 under. And then I'm just scrolling through. I don't think
that was it. No one missed the cut, I don't think.
Missed the cut, which is good. Good weekend for the Aussies. Two other brief things to call out. Ricky Fowler had a 60, the lowest recorded round in his entire career on the PGA Tour. Obviously, he wasn't all that far off that in the opening round of the US Open at LA Country Club. And fitting I mentioned LA Country Club because I believe Justin Thomas had a 61 in this tournament this weekend off the back of an 80.
62.
Sorry, 62.
On round 3.
Yeah, 62 off the back of an 80. Was it 81 or 82 he had at LACC?
Yeah, it was a lot.
Golf's a funny game, eh?
It is. 62 with a bogey.
62 with a bogey. Golf's a funny game. Briefly, Druids, a couple of quick things to round us out. The question without notice. Because I'm a little surprised you haven't brought this. But what is undoubtedly your favourite tour of all golfing tours up in a long, long time? That's the Champions Tour. We went through a purple patch there of talking about the Champions Tour a little, and we've gone off the boil. I only bring it up because Podrick Harrington defended his title. I don't know where it was played. I want to call it. I think it was at the Dick's Sporting Goods. Something.
Sporting Goods Open at the. I don't know. I'm not going to have a go at how you pronounce that. Enjoy Charlotte Country Club is what it. No, EN''Joie. You want to have a go at that?
Nah. Enjoy maybe. I don't know. Yeah. Who knows?
Move on.
So he wins. Is the point? The question I wanted to ask you, and I don't say this like I actually say this genuinely. Seriously, like there's no tongue in cheek here. Is there space for Podrick Harrington to play on the European team,
the Ryder Cup team,
at Marco Simeone Golf Course for the Ryder Cup later this year? Actually, seriously.
Short answer is no. I think if look. And the short answer is no. The long answer is yes, because I would love to see it happen. I think it would be just wonderful viewing. A little bit of experience in there may not go astray, considering the likes of Poulter and Westwood, they're all not going to be there. So Harrington may be a good fit in that circle, if that's what you're thinking. But I think the Europeans would be best off really pushing to have a lot of young players in their team and really getting some experience under their belt. That's my short answer. Would I love to see it? Absolutely. And I'm sure you would as well.
Not sure. I actually don't know in the history of the Ryder Cup if there's ever been a player who played following captaincy. So who played, then became a captain, and then was picked again as a player. I'm not sure that's ever happened. The guy's in touch, like T27 at the US Open, off the back of weekend rounds of 67. 73 is not great, but he had a 67 in moving day to make himself somewhat relevant at LA Country Club. His ball speed, he's got up in like the 190s. Like he's worked on his speeds. He's hitting the ball a mile. I don't think it'll happen, but I also don't necessarily think it's the stupidest suggestion that's ever been made, personally.
No, look, I don't disagree. I mean, if you're looking at the current leaders of points, you've got Rahm, McIlroy, and a bloke named Yannick Paul, who I've never heard of, Marshy. Literally have never heard that name in my entire life. And then followed by in the world ranking, in the world points, Hovland, Hatton, and Fitzpatrick. So that's where you're at right now.
Yeah.
So I'd suggest there needs to be a couple of names that are jumping there. I think guys like Fleetwood, Lowry, Rose. I think Moronk is a chance. Yeah, look, I'd love to see it happen. I just don't think it's going to happen, unfortunately, Marshy.
Tend to agree, Druids. Tend to agree, but I just thought it was worth flagging.
Yes, I've got one quick one before you give us your Brookwater recap, if that's okay. My apologies. Sure. Just a shout out to a good friend of the show, Tim Hart, who won the Emerald Pro-Am, obviously the Pro-Am circuit going on back home here in Australia, and then the on-site mining town series as well. The only reason I call this out, aside from Timmy winning, was that he hit an albatross that got him across the line. 525-meter par 5, sixth hole, holed out with a 4-iron from 207 meters, shot 10 under par 60, one shot off the club course record. So shout out Tim Hart. All yours for Brookwater. I'm assuming that, speaking of albatrosses and course records, that you're going to give us some sort of feedback there.
Yeah. So look, last Friday I was very fortunate to play in the Josh McIntosh Memorial Golf Day. It remains one of my favourite days on the calendar each and every year. I flagged it last week, mentioned that I was going to play in it. Mentioned that if you haven't listened to the episode that we recorded near the end, I think it was end of November in 2021 with Brad, Josh's older brother, kind of gives you the backstory on Josh's journey, suffering from an incredibly rare condition that he ultimately and tragically lost his life to a couple of years ago. So we first heard about Josh through Louis Dobler, Josh being an immense influence on Louis' early career growing up on the Brookwater Golf Course in the west of Brisbane. And that story was told beautifully by Brad in detail when we had Brad on, and we subsequently remained, in close contact and become good friends with Brad, who's a lovely, lovely human being. I had the pleasure of playing in his group last Friday, which is great. And a shout out to the third member of our group, Paul Baxter, PB, as he was affectionately known by Radzi. And Brad and PB and Josh lived together for what sounded like an incredible 4-year span. I was getting detailed recounts of stories of 2 p.m. Friday tea times and everyone rushing home from work to play, into beers in the Brookwater clubhouse, into watching the European Tour on a Friday night, into getting up early into the PGA Tour and rinsing and repeating for 3 days on the weekend. And it sounded like the liver's got to work out for the better part of 5 years in that house, but also sounded like 3 very close friends. So it was an absolute delight to play with Brad and with Paul out at Brookwater. I posted the scorecard. So we had a 4 under 68.
Yeah.
So Ambrose, and I've actually been a little surprised by the feedback, which, like, I didn't think 4 under was that impressive. And let me tell you why, because we didn't rank in the top 6. So they handed out prizes for the top 6, and 6th place was 6 under.
Yeah.
So we were 2 strokes out of the prizes and 2 strokes out of the top 6. But a lot of people were into me saying that they couldn't possibly believe it. So it was actually also 4 under with 2 bogeys, and you definitely don't win Ambrose Golf Days
No.
hitting 2 bogeys. But no, the boys did well. I contributed off the tee. I contributed actually putted very well. I probably
Well
dropped
done.
3 or 4 birdie putts and another 1 or 2 pars. I contributed very little to nothing in between. So I was off the tee and I was on the green, and Bradley essentially was the irons all day. But no, mate, it was a great day. You know yourself, it's a challenging course, and I can understand why some people maybe cast some aspersions on the score of 68. In some respects, I actually think the group of 3 was an advantage. So to be groups of 4, and we had a late withdrawal, unfortunately. Paddy, who I had played with previously this day, is a very entertaining man. It would have been great to spend 18 holes with him, but he was a bit sick. So we were dropped down to 3, and it actually may have been like from a pace of play perspective, it was excellent. We motored through. But I also think that the 4th player, I reckon, can often be a disservice to you. So three was an advantage. We were nimble, we were agile, we were mobile, but ultimately fell 2 strokes outside of the prices. So, but no, a great day and in great spirits. You know, the best part of 100 odd people out on the golf course, all the money raised going to Beyond Blue, actually, which is a cause that Josh was very passionate about as he was battling his illness. So yeah, a wonderful day and one I look forward to being part of next year as well, and in years to come. So a big shout out to Brad, to Naomi, his mum, and to all the crew that pulled together a great day for Josh at Brookwater on Friday.
Well done. Great recap and well played as well. And you've certainly improved on last year's effort. And I think you're up around that the 14 to 15 lost ball mark.
Yes,
you know, you're down to 4 or 5 this year, so you've done well. Congratulations.
I was thrilled.
And
I
think
actually thrilled.
You're probably buying into the feedback that you're getting a little bit too much. I think there's a lot of people just throwing a bit of bait at you there, KM, and you took it and ran with it.
Oh yeah, I did. Like, I mean, I don't
very
play,
personally, didn't you?
I don't play like. I mean, it's a running bit on this podcast. I don't play nearly as much as I'd like, and that's what happens when you have small children. But like, I'm not a terrible golfer when I do play. I actually think not playing a lot frees me up of any sort of expectation, and I go and hit the ball relatively well. And when you're playing in Ambrose, like, I think 4 under is absurd, but I think one person in particular who's a member at Brookwater was incredulous at the fact that we'd scored that well. Hit a birdie on one of the holes. I think it's the 4th or 5th on the front 9, which is a difficult hole. But
there you go.
I've been a member there for over a year. He said he's never hit anything better than a bogey, and he was absolutely incredulous that we birdied it. So, anyhow, that's that. That's a good way to end. I was going to maybe throw in a bit about the ongoing frivolities around the merger, but there's nothing further. They are at the mercy of a US Senate investigation. Jay Monahan's been called, who's not been cited, and obviously we hope he's well, still battling whatever health concerns he has been, which is forced time to step away from the game. But he's been summoned to appear, as has Yasir Al-Rumayyan from the Public Investment Fund. So we're going to be in for some interesting hearings, Stroots, because you can bet your sweet biddy that'll be broadcast live on C-SPAN or something of that nature, and we're going to be getting a lot of good viewing, I would have thought. So there's not much point in doing anything until those investigations happen and those hearings have been heard before the US Senate, because I imagine we will all be a lot more informed because you are, you're under oath. You're subject to the same consequences if you lie to the Senate as you were if you perjure yourself in court. So yeah, we're going to learn an awful lot over those couple of days of the Senate investigation hearings.
We certainly will, and there's not much point in us including anything more, because by the time we put this out, something will have changed.
It'll be redundant. In
the 4 hours when we go to bed, something will change. So
exactly right. So plenty coming as well. So the women go back to back from a majors perspective. Their next outing is Pebble Beach for the US Women's Open, and of course we've got Hoylake, Royal Liverpool, the Open Championship coming up in about 4 weeks' time. Not sure if you saw, very cheeky from Royal Liverpool, the day after the US Men's Open concluded, they posted a flyover video of Royal Liverpool.
Right.
About 30 seconds long. Looked fucking excited. God, it looks good. I'm so excited for this. But
telling you.
The caption, or the copy, it was probably about 4 or 5 lines. The first one was open to all. So just a little dig at LACC, little dig at the US Open. Literally the day after, just got in open to all.
Excellent.
So I loved that.
That's
Loved a
what we
little
like.
drive by from the RNA. So
Yeah.
plenty to be excited about. Plenty of content coming your way. Special. We've been promising it for a couple of weeks, but we decided to hold it over until next week. State of Origin, our State of Origin golf selections to coincide with the teams being named for Game 3. A redundant game because the Mighty Maroons have already wrapped up the series 2-0. But those NRL State of Origin teams will be named early next week for the final game in Sydney, and we will name our State of Origin golfing 4 balls to coincide with that. So that special episode will be coming out next week. Other than that, stay tuned. Lots more to come, Druids. Pleasure as always.